We look here, our next guest. I was excited to meet her, actually virtually first, through some of her important work. A millennial herself, Stephanie Cordes with the Cordes Foundation. What's really exciting about Stephanie's work is that she's focused on the generational piece as well, given that her parents, her father and mother have created this environment to do good. And so I'm excited to welcome Stephanie.
Thank you
Good
for
to see you.
having me.
So talk to me about the Cordes Foundation.
It's funny, Derek, because if you'd have asked me 2 years ago to be sitting here talking to you about the work I do with my family foundation, I never would have believed you. So 3 years ago, I graduated from UCSB and with a degree in communications and was so laser focused on fashion and traditional media, and always knew that we had a family foundation, but figured that that was more for the baby boomer generation to be more involved in philanthropy. So we started the foundation in 2006 when my dad sold his investment services company, and I attended some board meetings, some events, but always thought I'm going into fashion. And then when I graduated from high school or college, I got a job in a magazine, started working, and then really was more interested in what my parents were doing, and went to our poverty alleviation conference and was opened up to this whole new world of millennials that are social entrepreneurs, being involved in impact investing, and really supporting causes that they cared about in their workplace. So when I went back to mine, it didn't quite seem as fulfilling as it once was. So that's when my dad offered me to start working last year.
Oh, very cool. What has been the biggest learning lesson for you in this role?
I think that it's when you really know something that you're passionate about, there's a way to make an impact with it. So for me, I've always been passionate about fashion, and I thought that was just direct line. And then I really started digging into it and seeing this $1.5 trillion industry has a huge slavery footprint. And through nonprofits that we work with that empower artisans, through our impact investments in ethical jewelry companies, you really can combine fashion and impact. And really, I think if you know it's something you desire and there's a way to combine it with impact and philanthropy and use your skill sets and what you're already good at or interested in to make an impact.
So you've been a part of some important conversations around millennial cause engagement, White House, all of this stuff. From your angle, because you're of this generation, what are you seeing happening right now?
I've seen a lot in the growth of peer networks.
Yeah.
And I know that I like to be a part of networks like-minded. I'm part of a Tonic Impact Investing Network, and then Spark, who is the largest philanthropic network of young professionals. So we support them, and I think that finding others who share your same values really helps catalyze the work that you're doing.
Yeah. In terms of millennial, because you've worked with some organizations, are they struggling, some organizations struggling to understand how to activate people like us? I mean,
Yes.
talk about that.
I would definitely think that some organizations, and I think it's the understanding also of technology and how we use it and our connectivity, and it's always changing, and just the ways in which to reach us and spread awareness. So I think that's why a lot of nonprofits are starting young professionals boards to really find millennials that are the champions who will then increase their peers, because of even in the report it said more peers talking to other peers gives a better likelihood of people getting involved.
Yeah, because I noticed that we were having this conversation, we're 5 years that we started MCON, the reports and all of that, and what I begin to notice is that the conversation's changing, of course, so we have to, but it's kind of like, how do we get started? What are some words of wisdom for there's going to be people out here listening to you. How do you get started, or what have you noticed work?
I think, well, at the foundation, we use something called the 3 C's: connect, convene, catalyze.
Yeah.
So we work with organizations like Millennium Conference Network and Ashoka U that engage students. So students can find organizations that they can get involved with. So going to college campuses, saying what you're working on is a great way. And then a program called Frontier Market Scouts, where you can bring in a student for 6 months to work on a project, and any nonprofit can do that, or a social enterprise. So just finding the different opportunities, whether that's at college campuses, or I think foundations have a lot of knowledge of opportunities that their partners, because I know our partners will come to us and say, we need help with X, Y, and Z. And then millennials or other people will come and say, this is what I would love to do, how do I get involved? So kind of pairing people up like that is a good way.
So what are you working on right now that's kind of exciting for you and the foundation?
Well, so as I mentioned, ethical fashion is something that's really close to my heart. So we just invested in a jewelry company called SoCo that uses artisans in Nairobi and connects them to the global marketplace, and are looking at a few others as the rise of conscious consumerism and millennials having the most spending power in history. really thinking about how you're using your money and you're voting with your dollars. So I'm really particularly interested in this whole notion of how we're spending our money and how it's impacting, as every decision has an impact.
Yeah, and it seems that a lot of companies now are realizing, wow, we have to create products ethically, transparently, all of those things. A shift, right? You've seen that too?
Yeah, 91% of people would switch products if there was a cause related to it.
Wow.
That just came out in a report.
Unbelievable. Well, and when you think about this sort of product and consumer side, and we're even getting social good embedded into the business models, Tom's, Warby Parker, Harry's, all of those.
Right.
Are you working with any of those? Are you kind of watching them as they go through?
So as last year at the White House, we made the commitment to go 100% impact. So now we're starting to look a lot more into these types of enterprises. And so as I'm interested in fashion, looking at more of these specifically fashion ones, whether it's the one-for-one model or empowering artisans and giving them business training in other countries. It's a lot of different.
Great. Well, I am so excited you're here. Now, you and I are going to sit down again later on, but thanks so much for being part of this morning.
Thank you for having me.
I had a chance to travel and talk with millennials who are in philanthropy and making their own waves and movements with what they've been doing. What's been exciting is an individual I met, her name is Stephanie Cordes, and Stephanie had the luxury and opportunity to not only see philanthropy firsthand from her family, but also now gets to practice it through their foundation. I want to invite Stephanie Cordes out here right now as she comes out. She is the vice chair of the Cordes Foundation, works alongside her parents, Ron and Marty, and their vision to really work with the foundation and really spending some time in the millennial space, but fashion as well. So Stephanie, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me about this time when your parents say to you, we've got this thing that we want you to be involved with called the Family Foundation. I mean, did you even know what this thing was?
No, so it'd been something that my parents had always wanted to do, start a family foundation, but it wasn't until 2006 when my dad sold his financial services company that they had the resources to do so. So they told me about it, brought me to some board meetings, wanted to get me engaged, but I was very laser focused on, I want to be in fashion and media, so I'll be more involved in philanthropy later down the road. But then it wasn't until after college, after I landed my dream job at a magazine in New York, that I really started being more exposed to the work they were doing. And we have a poverty alleviation conference that we co-convened in Mexico called the Opportunity Collaboration. So when I went there for my first time, I was just exposed to this whole new world of millennial social entrepreneurs, impact investors, millennials doing philanthropic initiatives, and I wanted to be more a part.
Yeah. Now, your interest area is in fashion as well. Talk about what the foundation or where you're going with this, too.
So recently, I have always been interested in fashion, but more the traditional fashion and the beauty of it. But as I started doing more research, I saw that this $1.5 trillion industry affects millions of lives globally and has a huge slavery footprint. So I've been really interested in human rights, and so looking at different companies that are empowering artisans in the developing world, paying them fair wages, looking at their working conditions, and then helping them build businesses that then are connected to the global market here in the US. And so one of the companies that we work with is called SOCO, and they work with artisans in Nairobi and then connect them through their mobile phones to buyers in the US. And so I've been working a lot with that organization, as well as some nonprofits, one called Nest that also empowers artisans, and a few others that are similar.
Good. It seems recently this topic of how products are made is as important as what the company just does in the community as well. Are you seeing that a lot with fashion? I mean, is it just a recent trend, or has this been going on for a while?
I think it's been going on for a while, but I think it's been brought to the forefront more recently, and the whole notion of conscious consumerism, and that every purchase you make is making some type of impact, whether that's positive or negative, to the environment, to the people making it, down the whole supply chain. I think it kind of correlates with food and how the supply chain works with that. And so there's been a lot of companies recently that are working towards making an impact, such as the Tom's shoes and the one-for-one models. And so as at the foundation, we're doing a lot more impact investments. That's one way that we're putting more capital towards.
Yeah. It also seems that the conversation publicly now, too, is as important. Is that because of today's consumer?
Yeah, and especially the millennial generation, we have the most spending power out of any other generation. So it's really something that we all need to think about, and a conversation that's needing to be had. And millennials want more transparency in the companies that they're going to buy from. And the quote that I mentioned earlier is that 91% of consumers will switch to a brand if it has a cause associated with it.
Yeah. When talking about philanthropy and giving in service, it's an interesting discussion. Cheryl just said, let's not hide it. Let's have a conversation at the dinner table. I'm assuming that those conversations also occurred. Was it an awkward thing in the beginning for your family to talk about this kind of piece?
I think that they tried to bring it up slowly and just introduced it to me actually by letting me experience it. So I used to travel a lot when I was younger. So they would bring me and have me sit down with the organizations, and it was so much more powerful seeing it firsthand and on the ground than having them just tell me about it and having a discussion. So I think that's what made me more engaged, is having firsthand experience.
Yeah. And in terms of the foundation, you have to do both. I assume that some things that they're interested in, some is yours, or how's that working out?
Yeah, so, our two main focuses at the foundation are social entrepreneurship, because my dad, being a traditional entrepreneur, he said he went from trying to build the best business in the world to now supporting the best businesses for the world. And then my mom's focus on women's and girls' empowerment, from working at battered women's shelters and just being an activist in that, then me coming along and thinking about women's entrepreneurship, as that's more on the rise, as women are getting more higher positions in the workplace. And so I think that it was already a nice blend for me coming in. So we all have been able to work together really well.
What is the biggest learning lesson you've had so far in this new role that you're taking on?
Well, I think before I was looking at more work-life balance, but now I think the millennial generation is looking more at work-life blend, and how everything that you're working on is somehow coinciding with something else in your life. So I don't have a traditional 9-to-5 job. And so, which at the magazine I did, and I liked, 5 o'clock, I'm done. But now it's trying to figure out how everything can mesh together and not overworking myself. But then if I like what I do so much, then why would I have this kind of cutoff? So managing that has been both a challenge and an opportunity.
Yeah. Now you get to be now on the other side of this by also supporting causes and issues. Has it been different? Has it been a different thing? Because you probably were more of a participant, a volunteer, and doing all those things. I'm sure you do that still. What's it like now being on the other side as well, as a supporter of them?
Yeah, it's been a great experience, because I've been able to work with so many different types of people and learn so much from each entrepreneur or person that I've been able to work with. And I've found that so much more than our financial capital, it's the human, intellectual, social capital that really anyone can help an organization. And it doesn't mean you have to be a foundation or a donor-giving organization, that anyone can help whatever capacity that they see fit.
With the social entrepreneurs that you're funding, what's the biggest challenge, or what do you often hear that they're struggling with?
A lot is bandwidth, and they just have so many ideas, and kind of honing in on which ones are the best to execute and how to do this effectively. Because social entrepreneurs, their mind's always running, they see all these opportunities, and really putting more focus into, okay, let's sit down and really strategize how we're gonna go about doing everything.
Yeah, and do you think that there's some, Richard earlier from American Express was talking about leadership as well, and capacity. Do they turn to you and others of the foundation to connect and help? I mean, how does that work?
Yes, definitely. And our three ethos of the foundation is connect, convene, catalyze. So we love to connect people. If I don't know, say, how they should do their educational strategy, but I do know someone else over here, let me connect. And then convening, so we'll host a lot of convenings around a particular topic to have people meet others who can help them.
So what's on the horizon for the foundation? Like, where do you think things are gonna go?
Oh, that's a good question. There's so many different ways, as I was saying earlier, but personally, I'm building out more of our ethical fashion, philanthropic, and investment portfolio, so investing more in ethical fashion impact companies, as well as nonprofits that are working with artisans.
So both sides of the equation, right?
Right,
So not
so-
just causes, but also companies.
Right, and then that's kind of what my dad has always instilled in our foundation, is that it shouldn't just be the 5% that we give away for grants and then the other 95% make the money and give back. It's always that 95% still activated in impact investments. So that's why our entire portfolio is 100% impact. So we care just as much about what kind of companies we're investing in as what kind of nonprofits that we're donating to.
So you represent a new wave of leaders to foundations, because a lot of the other foundations in the United States are not typically your age.
Right, right.
So when you look at that, and do you go to meetings, and is that a weird conversation?
Yes, definitely. So the three of us at that foundation, other than my parents, are all millennials, all under 30. So we go to impact investing conferences, and people are kind of asking, so where's your executive team? And we're like, right here. So it's been an interesting discussion, but then I think it brings a really unique perspective to the table. And my dad likes the reverse mentoring model. So how we are able to give just as much mentoring and guidance to the older generation as they are to us, just in different skill sets.
Yeah. What do you have going on in the coming months that everybody should know about?
Oh, in the coming months, well, Opportunity Collaboration is an amazing conference that we co-convene, and it was what I became into this sector for, because just meeting and being inspired, which is the power of influence, on just being influenced by all the other participants and people. So that's one exciting thing that's coming up.
Good. Well, thanks so much for your time here. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes.